I wasn't always a soldier, at least not like I am now. Had another life before the Krellians came knocking. Worked in construction, helped build some of those glittering towers that reach for the heavens. A small cog in that relentless human drive to conquer the sky. We're a funny species, you know, with our dreams of towers and the tools to match. If the Krellians had waited a few more decades, they might have seen cities that stretched from horizon to horizon. But they didn't wait, and that's how I found myself swapping blueprints for blasters. Funny thing was, folks weren't exactly shocked when the skies ripped open and those shimmering saucers spilled out. It was like all those B-movies. All those pulpy stories from our grandparents' time became real with terrifying accuracy. The fear, of course, it was always there, a hum beneath the surface. But it was a familiar fear somehow, one we'd rehearsed in our imaginations for so long. It had softened at the edges. Maybe we just needed something new to be afraid of, the old dredged bombs we built ourselves. The plagues that could rise from the thawing ice had gone stale. See, humanity's not so good at long-term dread. We're sprinters, wired for the immediate, the hot flare of danger. The Krellians, with their gleaming metal bodies and their eyes like chunks of obsidian, they fit the bill. I remember the day the sirens wailed. Was having lunch with the crew on the scaffolding. Greasy takeout and a view of the whole steel and glass city sprawling beneath us. Pete, big guy with shoulders like a bull. He choked on his burger when the newsfeed crackled to life on his beat-up radio. Aliens, they were saying, a whole damn fleet of them. We all just kind of stared at each other. You'd have thought the world itself had turned upside down. But there was a strange calmness hanging heavy in the air. It wasn't acceptance, more like a bracing for the blow. No one panicked. I think a part of us had been waiting for this. All the way back to the grainy footage of Roswell, and the whispers of those eerie lights in the desert. Now, don't get me wrong. When the Krellians started carving cities into rubble, when those disintegration beams turned people I knew into wisps of ash swirling in the wind, that fear, it spiked into something bone deep, something raw. But underneath it, there was a stubborn streak of something else, defiance maybe, or a strange kind of curiosity. Those bastards might have been here to erase us, but we weren't going down without trying to figure them out first. The switch from construction worker to frontline grunt was rough. It wasn't the guns or the drills. We'd used those often enough. It was the mindset. See, building, that's an act of hope. You throw yourself into the work, the sweat and the strain, knowing something solid will rise from it, a home, an office, a place with purpose. Fighting was different. It was about tearing down, about holding a line your enemy was hell-bent on crossing. The whole logic of it ran counter to everything I'd known. First time I fired on a Krellian, I hesitated. Not because they weren't the enemy then we had seen enough to fuel hate for 100 lifetimes, but because they were so damn alien. Sleek and insectal, moving with a precision that was less machine-like and more like some uncanny natural force. I had this stupid flickering thought of how we spent centuries deciphering the movements of animals, the wisdom in the dance of bees or the migration of birds. And here was something truly otherworldly, and I was about to blow it to bits. I fired, of course. You adapt, or you die in a scorched crater. But the hesitation, a flicker of it, stayed with me. The scientists, hunched over their lab benches in underground bunkers, they got a glint in their eyes when we brought back Krellian tech. That curiosity ran deep, twisted with desperation as it was. They were like kids dismantling a fascinating, terrifying toy. The kind that could burn down the house if you pressed the wrong switch. That's where things got interesting, see? Our defiance wasn't just spitting in the face of some cosmic bully. It became methodical, pragmatic. Turns out, humans are real good at picking apart the new and scary. It's how we survive this long look the unknown in the eye, strip it down, see how it ticks. Every Krellian soldier blasted into metallic shards was a puzzle piece brought back to our subterranean labs. The Krellians, for their part, seemed flummoxed. If they expected us to cower or crumble, they were getting a nasty surprise. Our resistance was less an army and more like a whole species saying, "We don't care about your odds. We're gonna figure you out. And then we're gonna punch you right in your weird alien faces. We learned fast. It was brutal. Knowledge paid for in blood and shattered cities. But learn we did. Their energy shields flickered and warped under frequencies we jury-rigged from old radio towers. Their comms networks, supposedly unbreakable, got infiltrated by hackers raised on back-alley internet brawls and a whole lot of spite. Hell, some farmers figured out that their crop sprayers, loaded with a cocktail of fertilizer and scavenged alien fluids, could gum up the exhaust vents on those saucers, sending them tumbling to Earth. The Krellians went from conquerors to students, forced to decode our mess of improvised weapons and illogical strategies. We knew they were advanced, with starfaring tech that should have wiped us out effortlessly. But there was something in their rigid efficiency that left them blindsided. Maybe they conquered too many species who truly did cower at the sight of their ships. Maybe we were their first encounter with a planet-sized middle finger. The thing about humans, we're at our best when backed into a corner, or worst, depending on who you ask. There's a feral tenacity in us, a stubborn determination to bend the world to our will, no matter how crazy it seems. Turns out, we could turn that drive towards survival just as readily as building towers that kiss the clouds. And here's the kicker. Underneath the rage, under the need to survive, I think some of us started to pity the Krellians. They were powerful, sure. But they'd gotten so fixated on technology, on cold, brutal efficiency, that they hadn't calculated for the sheer bloody-minded spirit of our species. To them, we were probably ants scurrying underfoot, numerous, but insignificant. They didn't count on the kind of ant that could build anthills, concoct poisons, and if need be, gang up and tear apart something 100 times their size. We're still fighting, of course. The war rages across continents, scars the heavens, and buries far too many of my friends. But there's a change in the air. It's not hope, not yet, but it's a shift from blind terror to that sharp, focused defiance. The Krellians came here expecting a conquest, a swift and tidy extermination. What they got instead was a lesson. Never underestimate a species that can look into the abyss, crack a grin, and ask, all right, so what the hell is this thing made of, and how can I use it to kick some donkey? Word of Private Anya Twitch Kovalev had begun to circulate even before I laid eyes on her. The stories were wild. The farm girl who'd taken down a Krellian dropship with an antique hunting rifle and a handful of salvage power cells. The Comtech whisperer with grease under her fingernails who'd cracked Krellian command chatter like it was a backwoods code. The tiny slip of a woman who moved like a shadow in devastated cities, ferrying messages and vital intel through the ruins. She turned out to be all that and less. Not a superhero out of a comic book. Just a weary girl with dust smudged on her face and a pair of mismatched eyes that missed nothing. We met in what was once a bombed-out museum, sunlight filtering through the shattered dome painting streaks across the cracked marble floor. Anya was already there, hunkered down on a fallen bust of some old Roman dude, cleaning a pilfered Krellian blaster with the meticulous care of a watchmaker. I hear you're the one they call Twitch, I said. My squad, what was left of them, loitered back, weapons tight, eyes narrow with that mix of suspicion and grudging respect that survivors share. She glanced up, one eyebrow quirked, then dipped a rag into some oily concoction and went back to work. The name sticks, I guess. Less insulting than some I've been called. I settled onto the pedestal opposite, trying to ignore how those sharp eyes made my spine prickle. I need someone to get a message through. Top priority, command's playing deaf, and we're sitting ducks out here. I do messages, not miracles, she said flatly. If your glorious leaders have gone dark, bet those shiny Krellian bastards know why. Some of the tension bled out of me. I liked her already. They don't just jam our comms, I explained, gesturing at the shattered remains around us. The Krellians, they twist them, feed disinfo, turn our own tech against us. Understanding flickered across her face, replacing the wariness. They're learning, she murmured. Getting sloppier though, cockier. That means there could be cracks, back channels. I finished. That's where you come in. Twitch tilted her head, studying me. Used to be a tactician, she asked. I gave a mirthless laugh. Construction manager. Guess building and blowing things up ain't all that different. Her lips curved, the barest hint of a smile. Then, quick as a striking snake, she reached into her pack, withdrew a battered data slate, and tossed it to me. Map of the mess that's left of the old comm relays. Some frequencies the Krellians ain't figured out yet, old analog stuff. Get your message encoded right, punch it out through the closest half-functional relay, and pray it ain't intercepted. I hefted the slate. Something like hope nudging at the dread in my gut. This you're a lifesaver. Twitch, she shrugged. Slender shoulders outlined against the shattered sunlight. Maybe, or maybe I just got you all killed a bit slower. Still an upgrade from last week, though. There was a bleak sort of humor under her words. The kind that grows like mold in the damp corners of a war zone. It made her seem older than she was, tinged with the exhaustion that pressed down on us all. But there was no self-pity in it, none of that pointless woe is me sentiment. Here was a fighter who'd stared down the worst the galaxy could throw at us, and hadn't blinked. Our mission was a desperate gamble. Getting to the relay station meant slipping past Krellian patrols. Rigging the old tech on the fly, and hoping like hell the message would cut through. It was a long shot, but at that point, when every day felt like borrowed time, we'd run out of good options. Twitch came with us. I hadn't expected it, but some unspoken understanding passed between us amidst the twisted girders and broken glass. It was more than needing her expertise with comms, more than owing a debt for that map. This girl, with her grease-stained hands and her quiet intensity, she was hope made flesh. Not the wide-eyed, naive kind, but a hope forged in fire, the kind. That said, we weren't going down without ripping a few teeth out of fate first. The relay station was a skeletal thing, half-gutted by Krellian blasts. We went in under the cover of a dust storm. The city around us a maze of fractured buildings and shadows that danced to the eerie light, filtering through the swirling grit. Our boots crunched on bone-dry earth. The once vibrant metropolis turned to an alien desert. Twitch moved like a ghost, her scavenged Krellian fatigues blending her with the rubble. I didn't know how half of our squad even saw her, but they kept pace. The trust evident in the way they shifted, covering angles where she vanished. For all her slight build, there was a presence about her, something that demanded attention even in her silence. The relay itself was a nightmare of tangled wires and half-disassembled tech. Krellian and human alike had picked it clean, leaving a carcass of its former function. Yet, Twitch knelt amidst that chaos, eyes taking on a feverish gleam. It wasn't the look of a scavenger picking through the trash. It was the look of an engineer confronting a puzzle she was hellbent on solving. We shielded her while she worked, the relay casting long, grotesque shadows in the gloom. Each rasp of metal, each muttered curse, held our breaths. It was madness. This idea that we could outwit the Krellians at their own game. Yet, watching Twitch's deft fingers dance over the mess, a twisted kind of belief started to worm its way in. When she finally straightened, there was a streak of grime across her forehead, a triumphant spark in her eyes. This ain't pretty, and it might blow halfway to hell, but it'll sing, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I encoded the message myself, heart pounding a drumbeat in my chest. It was all our last hopes distilled into lines on a screen: coordinates, intelligence. A desperate plea for reinforcements. Twitch adjusted dials that looked like they'd snap at a touch, humming some forgotten folk tune under her breath. Then came the moment, the world narrowing down to the flickering light of the old relay console. Twitch hit the sequence, and the air thrummed with something electric, a pulse of ancient energy that made my hair stand on end. The lights on the console blinked on, sputtered, then flared with an intensity that was both dazzling and terrifyingly fragile. Each second that vintage tech held felt like we'd stolen years from the encroaching darkness. Messages away, she rasped, then the whole damn thing sagged back into darkness. We scattered, the shadows our only allies. The storm faded, leaving us starkly exposed under the Krellian heavens. Did it work? Would it be intercepted? Twisted by our enemy? The unknowing was torture. A different kind of hell to the one we already endured. Back at our makeshift camp, hidden beneath the skeletal remains of an overpass, the waiting was unbearable. Ours bled into a day, then another. My squad, those tough bastards with haunted eyes, they shifted from bravado to a resignation that was worse than open fear. When the crackle finally came over our salvage comms, it was almost a shock. It wasn't the message I'd sent. It was a reply, scrambled, glitched, but undeniably there, punching through the Krellian static. Command was back online. The scrambled reply, the electronic equivalent of a hand reaching through the abyss. It was just acknowledgement, a promise of backup still impossibly far away, but it hit us all like a detonation. We weren't dead yet. We weren't going to die quietly. Twitch was by the fire then, cleaning that damn blaster again. The flickering light glinted off the metal, but her gaze was distant, seeing things I couldn't fathom. I sat beside her, the silence between us thick and oddly companionable. Finally, she spoke. Her voice low. Those Krellian, they ain't used to scrappers. Used to worlds that fold the second they show up. So we bite back and bleed em, I said. We bleed em, she echoed, then turned those fierce eyes on me. But we gotta be smarter than M2. Not their kind of smart, our kind. I held her gaze, and something like understanding flared hot in my chest. I'd learned tactics in the heat of battle, the brutal math of survival. Twitch, little slip of a girl with the dust of 1,000 worlds on her boots. She saw the whole damn war differently. She understood that it wasn't just strength against strength, but our kind of wild, unpredictable brilliance against their rigid order. We can do this, I said, the conviction burning away the last of the doubt. Not just hold on, but win. A smile, sharp and fierce, cracked across Twitch's face. Knew you had it in ya, she murmured, turning her attention back to her weapon. Then it happened. Not an external threat, not a Krellian ambush. The change came from within. The flicker of our campfire morphed into something harsh and alien. Shadows that should have simply danced in the firelight writhed with a malevolent sentience, stretching and twisting into impossible shapes. The air throbbed, a pulse that wasn't the comforting rhythm of human hearts, but a cadence entirely other. A collective chill descended on the squad. It was more than just primal furthus, was a wrongness that sunk its claws into the marrow of instinct. A cold certainty settled over me. This was betrayal, not by the enemy we knew, but by something far more terrifying. Something we might have unwittingly dragged back amongst us. Twitch was already on her feet, blaster raised. Every inch of her was coiled tension, but her eyes held a dreadful focus. The focus of someone who recognized the unseen monster now twisting our reality. As she spun towards the source, her words hung unfinished in the charged air. The hell did you bring back from those ruins, soldier? My gaze snapped to Jensen. Good man, reliable. He was closest to the pack he'd hauled back from the relay station with old human tech, laced now with scavenged bits of Krellian circuitry. He stared at it with a mixture of horror and morbid fascination, as though witnessing his own hand transform into something grotesque. The throb intensified, the air heavy with a pressure that threatened to pop eardrums. Something pulsed at the center of that scavenged heap, something that shouldn't exist. A sliver of Krellian tech, but warped, infused with an energy that prickled the skin and shrieked in the back of the mind. It's alive. The thought came unbidden, a certainty as awful as it was undeniable. Not Krellian alive, but a perversion of tech and something else. Something that hummed with a hunger we'd inadvertently awakened. In the mangled ruins of a dead world,